We're back. We're back. We're back. Like my singing? I can't sing. Never been able to. Never really learned either. I can't even play an instrument. My mom put me through piano. You know, I think every mom puts their kid through piano. Didn't stick, obviously. I wish I stuck with it. I think I would have liked to been able to play now. Maybe someday. Maybe I'll get into it someday. Piano would be cool. Guitar would be fun. Or maybe like ukulele. That might be a little easier. Maybe I could do a uke. Harmonica, maybe. You know, you can take that anywhere. Just pull it out. Play some harmonies. Not today, though. Today, video. All right, I'm sufficiently psyched. Hey everyone, Braydon here with Pickleball Effect. So this month I've been playing with Bread and Butter's Loco. This is a full foam paddle that they just introduced. I have a couple of new shapes in Honolulu's popular NF series. I have their wide body and their long-handled J2 that I have some thoughts on. And then a new series from Pickleball Apes called the Harmony. This is a Gen 3 variant. Thanks to these brands for sending me their paddles. However, this video is not sponsored by them. These are my own thoughts. I'm just here to help you guys find the best paddle for your game and just sort through the massive paddles that are out there. However, if you do find this video helpful, you can use the links and codes in the description. Using those gives me a small commission and goes to support my channel so I can keep making awesome videos like this. So let's start with the Bread and Butter Loco. So like I said earlier, this is a full foam paddle that they just released. It's retailing for $199. And then they released this in all three of their shapes. So they have a standard wide body shape. They have a hybrid and an elongated. You're going to see a lot of people compare this paddle to the Selkirk Boomstik because there's a lot of similarities in both performance and in construction. Looking at the x-rays of these, you can see that both of these have a full foam EPP core that is surrounded by a ring of EVA foam. And then if you've seen any review of the Boomstik, you've seen my review, you've heard that these things are very powerful, very poppy, and they're all true. And they're also very loud. They're one of the first foam paddles to bring this much heat, but also bring a different feel to the market, that it wasn't a more dense, more plush feel that many of the other foams are. Bread and Butter is following the footsteps of the Boomstik with the Loco. It has good power and it has that similar stiffer, more hollow feel to it. There are some subtle differences between the two that we'll get into. But offensive wise, the Boomstik is in like the high 90th percentile, mid 90th percentile in total firepower, while the Loco is going to falls in like the lower 90 percentiles and the higher 80s, depending on what shape you use. And so it is definitely a power paddle, but it is toned down from the Boomstik, which I think is a good thing in a lot of ways for a lot of people. The Boomstik had enough firepower, enough pop to it that you had to have a developed soft game. You had to be a good player to be able to manage it well, take advantage of the offense that it has without it causing too much damage to your game. But then you still get that different feel for a foam that the Boomstik brought to the table that those who are coming from a Gen 3 were attracted to. Those the people that like that kind of stiffer, hollower feel from a Gen 3 are going to find that in the Loco and will like that as well. The speaking of the feel nuances, differences between the two, if you're familiar with the Yola Pro 4 series, the Boomstik is very similar in feel to the 16 millimeter, where it's stiffer, very hollow, and then the Loco is more like the 14 millimeter of a Pro 4, where it's a little bit firmer and not quite as hollow feeling as the 16 millimeter, but though you can tell they are very similar, and that's what you're getting here. The Boomstik's like the 16, the Loco's like the 14, though the Locos are all three shapes are 16 millimeters in thickness, and so that's where those fall feel wise. The three shapes are all good. I'm particularly drawn to the hybrid and the wide body. I think the numbers here are great. These are more maneuverable than the Boomstiks, though not quite as forgiving as the Boomstiks. The Boomstiks have this attached tuning system that makes them very forgiving, but also comes at the sacrifice of some maneuverability. The Locos are more maneuverable, a little bit lighter. And then, so there's some room for customization there without getting to the same weight as the Boomstiks if you don't want to. The hybrid and the wide body are in that sweet zone, that nice spot where good forgiveness out of the box, a good weight to them. Like they have a expected, what you expect for their shapes in terms of sweet spot and maneuverability. They're in a good spot. So you can play them out of the box, but there is some room for some customization if you want to. You can see I added some weight to the sides of both the hybrid and the wide body, though I didn't add as much weight as Selkirk did with their boomstick. So it is nice having the option there. The elongated shape of the Locos, I wasn't as big on as the other two shapes. It's heavier for an elongated. It came in at a 120 swing weight and then has a just under 6.2 twist weight. So you don't get an oversized sweet spot for an elongated shape with the extra weight it's giving you. And so not my favorite elongated shape. However, the other two are solid. If I wanted an elongated shape and liked the idea of the Loco, I still think I would go boomstick. The numbers on it are better. It's more forgiving. It's about the same swing weight. It's actually lighter in swing weight in some cases, depending on which one you get. But those are my thoughts on the shapes. But overall, just very impressed with the series. I think it's going to be attractive to both high-level players and people who want to jump into the power category, want something that's going to bring that bigger offensive power, but without being too much where it's tougher to tame. These do bring more offense than the Honolulu NF series. The Honolulu NF series is in that lower tier power level. Locos, I would say, are mid-tier, and then the boomsticks are top-tier power. That's how I would rank all three of those. And so, yeah, that's my thoughts on the Locos. Moving over to the NFs, they introduced a couple of new shape options that I want to talk about. So they have their standard shape here, and then the long-handled J2, or the long handle of their hybrid. So these also retail for $195. They have the same foam design. They have the same fill as the other NFs in the series, which means it's more dense, it's more plush than the boomstick and the Loco, but still gives you a good level of firepower, low tier, even more approachable than the Locos in terms of their power level. I really like these new two shape options. So let's talk first about the long handle of the J2NF. So the magic of the original, the shorter handle hybrid of the NF is that it's very forgiving but still maneuverable, more forgiving than other hybrid shapes out there. But I guess the drawback, or the reason why some people didn't like that shape, is because it had a shorter handle at about 5.3 inches. So if you're a heavy two-handed user, it did get a little bit more crammed. And so Honolulu took that feedback, came out with this longer handled version of the hybrid. But when there's a couple of challenges when you make a longer handle hybrid. One, it's easy to increase the swing weight, and then two, it's tough to maintain elite stability like the original J2 had. And so going with this longer handle, they were at risk of taking some of the magic that made the original shape with the shorter handle so good, with its good maneuverability and high stability, high forgiveness ratings. But they pulled it off, man. They did a great job. They extended the handle length, they maintained its excellent stability, and the swing weight did not go higher. So if you're looking at the numbers, the long handle version that I have here was actually 1 swing point less than the shorter handle version that I have. And so the swing weight is essentially the same. The twist weight was also essentially the same. The twist weight on the long handle version was 6.6 on mine. My original was 6.67. And so when you're playing these side by side, you really can't tell a difference in maneuverability and in stability. If you're being like super nitpicky, maybe you can feel a little bit more stability in the shorter handle version, but it's not material. It's not enough to be like, oh, I need to go with the shorter handle because it's so much more stable than the long handle version. That wasn't the case at all. They pulled it off. They made a longer handle version that kept the magic of the original shorter handle version, and now it just kind of comes down to just handle length preference. Go with a longer handle if you're a heavy two-handed user. Go with the shorter handle if you don't have any two-handed shots, because it does give you just a touch more stability. But they did a great job. Excellent new option from them. And then they also released a standard model. Again, they did a great job with this. So it's a little bit shorter, a little bit wider than their hybrid shape. A couple of things I noticed with this was, one, although it's a wide body shape, it's not any more forgiving than the original or than their hybrid shapes. You have the same level of forgiveness there, which was a little bit unexpected. However, the firepower level is the exact same on this as it is with the hybrid. Sometimes when you go we play different shapes within the same series, you're going to have different levels of offensive power. That was the case with the Locos. Their wide body shape is just a little bit less firepower than their hybrid and their elongated. Not the case here. The wide body has just as much firepower as their hybrid shape. And so I thought that was great. It keeps that same identity there. It has the same feel, that denser, plusher feel as the others as well. Though but you do gain some maneuverability, but not necessarily any forgiveness out of the box. However, because it comes in with a lighter swing weight at about 110 compared to the 113 of their hybrid, it's easy to add some weight to the sides to get that oversized sweet spot that you'd expect from a wide body, and then still keep that lightweight nature that I love in wide body shape. So this is a good option from them, and this also has an extended handle length like their long handle J2 version. So that's the J3NF. Another good option there. If you like wide bodies, go with it, and you won't go wrong there. Last options or last paddles we're going to talk about here are the Harmonies from Pickleball Apes. These retail at $180 and are also available in 3 different shapes. They have a wide body, hybrid, and elongated. I absolutely love their wide body shape. It's the V. This was my favorite shape of the 3. We'll dive into that in a minute. But speaking of general performance and construction, so these are Gen 3 style paddle. However, that's not built like a typical Gen 3. Most Gen 3 style paddles have extended foam going around the entire head in either like a horseshoe or a floating core design. And that will typically give it like an all core or power level performance. However, those typical Gen 3 styles are known for having some durability challenges, and Pickleball Apes wanted to avoid those durability challenges, and so they came up with a variation or a different way to make a Gen 3 style paddle while keeping or improving the durability. So what they did is they added foam to all 4 corners, or they extended the foam in all 4 corners, and then had the polymer core go all the way out to the edge instead of having more foam get in the way there. And they did a ton of user testing that I followed as they were developing these. They gave these a lot of bangers, let them hit them for several weeks to test, just to see how they held up in a real life scenario in real people's hands. And it did. It came back from that testing being proven to be more durable than their others. I believe the testing they did. I thought they did a good job there. I am convinced that these are more durable than your typical Gen 3 style paddle. However, they don't perform like your typical Gen 3 style paddle. This is very control oriented. It's very dense, very plush, very soft. It does not have that hollow. It does not have that stiff feel that is typically accompanies a Gen 3 style paddle. It's very reminiscent of like a Gen 1 style paddle or the Vatic Pro Prism Flash. So with these retailing at 180, and playing in that control category space, there has to be something about it that really stands out to make me, recommend this over those popular $100 control paddles out there like the Vatic Pro Prism Flash or the 11624 Jelly Bean. And these, although they played well for a control paddle, there was just nothing that stood out about them that made me say, yes, I want to play this over those cheaper options. And so that was the hang up for me on these. Just being in that competitive space, I really didn't think that these brought anything unique to the table over what was existing and is available at a better price. And additionally, I'm not crazy about their shapes other than their wide body. Their wide body is lightweight, extremely forgiving, easy to customize. Really like their V shape. Their hybrid shape doesn't take advantage of the allowable dimensions that you can use to create a paddle. So it's a little bit shorter like most hybrids, but it's not quite as wide as other hybrids. And when you look at the numbers, it reflects that. It has a smaller twist weight at about 6.3 when most hybrids are 6.6, 6.7, 6.8 on the twist weight side. And it does play a little less forgiving than compared to other hybrids. And then their elongated shape it has very similar numbers to the Loco, where it's a little heavier at 120, then has kind of like an average, a little below average twist weight at 6.2. So while not horrible numbers, nothing that said, oh man, this is a great elongated control paddle that I'm going to pick over something else. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Harmonies. Feel great, play good for a control paddle, kind of fall into that offensive control style. It feels very similar to the Vatic Pro Prism Flash because you just a touch more pop of the net compared to those. Very similar offensive output to the 11624 Jelly Beans, so they do feel a little bit softer and more dense compared to the Jelly Beans, though the Jelly Beans still feel very pleasant and plush to me. But yeah, those are my thoughts there. So if you have any questions about any of these paddles, you want to dive deeper on any points I made, or maybe I skipped over something that you were interested in and wanted to know about, please ask questions in the comments. I'll be active in there. I'll be happy to dive deeper where needed. But yeah, there's my thoughts there. Hope that helped. Thanks for tuning in.